But I definitely wanted to get through the children's budget book, and then we can move to Kids Share, and then onto the rest of our agenda. And also just point out that David Kerp's still outside, and so if people want to get his book and get him to sign it, it's really a great book. And in addition to that, I hope that people can stay for Drew Weston at the end of the day. He's got really great messaging information that he's going to share with us, and I know at the end of the day it's always sort of the drop-off point, but he really has some amazing stuff that I think will be important to people here. So back to sort of where we were on the children's budget 2011. So what I was noting is that this past year was the sort of zenith of kind of where children stood in the federal budget at about 9.2% share. But through 2011, through some of the cuts that we're seeing and sort of the drop-off of ARA, as you can see, which is the red bar, it drops down to 8.4%. And the trend after that is downward, and my colleagues here talking about Kids Share will go into more detail around that. So the question becomes, is that, you know, I talked some about how during recessions and stuff that some of the federal programs kick in quicker. So is this the time really to start having this drop off? And what I would note is that the poverty rate for kids is actually is currently around 21%, but is expected to continue to rise all the way up to potentially up to 25%. So to us, now is not the time, and what we'd like to do is continue and hold children harmless. And I think the data on outcomes and child well-being are very important, and that we hope that Congress doesn't back away from its commitment to children at this moment in time. So our point is that the future doesn't look bright, and we've got lots of challenges ahead for us. I also wanted to point out that, the Kids Share book really highlights this. So there's two sets of data. What the children's budget book really looks at is the appropriations items. So it's a more narrow look, snapshot of what's going on with children in the budget. The Kids Share piece looks at the past 50 years, and it looks at spending and tax provisions, and then also does a 10-year projection ahead. So it's a much bigger view. Ours is more narrow and specific to the appropriations bills, but even in that analysis, and they're going to talk about even the bigger picture, but in the more narrow analysis, you can see that the share of spending for kids that we project that by 2014, which is also what, even in the broader look of it, things, that interest on the debt, payments on interest on the debt will exceed spending on kids. And then just to go back real quick to this chart, you can see the trend also on spending on kids is going to fall below 2007 levels in the way we're heading. And this really highlights sort of what's going on with the budget. And you can see that in the FY 2012 House proposal on kind of spending on kids, you can see sort of a dramatic cut. And we already know that the Labor HHS Education Budget Authority is down by more than 10%. And so if we're saying things like Medicare's off the table and those kinds of things, that just puts more pressure in the Labor HHS account on children. And so we're deeply concerned about kind of what that means in terms of what is the kid share of that cut. David Walker showed this chart, and I just wanted to sort of highlight it again, is that it's counter to what the voters want. The voters do want children to be taken off the table more than other programs. In fact, one of the things he didn't talk about is we actually we haven't really published this fact, but we did ask the question just to test it. We asked the question, do you think kids or seniors are a bigger priority to you? Now, we think that both are priorities, so we're not trying to pick kids against seniors, but we just wanted to see, because this perception among policymakers on Capitol Hill is that seniors. But the fact of the matter is, almost by a 2-to-1 margin, people actually pick kids, and even seniors pick kids over seniors. So kids are where people want to protect in the budget. So again, real quick, I'll go through this really quickly, is a little method to our madness, is that we do believe that, and we do subscribe to sort of what Kristen Grimm talks about at Spitfire Strategies about what are the 3 steps to really getting policy change, particularly on an issue that has lots of public support. And so there's certainly the important things I think that we all do very well around sharing knowledge, But what they also talk about is really you got to do the next steps, and that's building will and taking action, which is sort of identifying windows of opportunities and creating agendas around them. And so certainly children's budget could share examples of sharing knowledge, all the work that all of you do every day. CDF just put out the State of America's Children, on and on and on. All the data we provide, I think is very useful. As a Hill staffer, I always appreciated all of that. But it doesn't lead to action. And so the next pieces, of course, are building will. And so part of us having people here today who are champions is to thank them. It's exactly what David Kerp talked about, is the criticism that people have of our community is we're so busy working that when we get a success story, we're on to the next thing. And it's really take time to thank people for, we don't have PACs, we can't reward people that way, but we can thank them and to really try to build a cadre of champions. And we can look on Capitol Hill, and it's not like we have hundreds of people who are advocating for kids. And so the more we can build beyond the people we've had, the people that all of you all thank, we should reach out to as many people. I will note we asked Michelle Bachman if she would be here today. She's a foster care mom and wanted her to talk from that perspective. She's busy in Iowa running for president, but we actually, I think we need to reach across both parties, both sides of the aisle. And again, this year we've given awards to Senator Snowe, Senator Collins, Congressman Reichert, Congresswoman Mary Bono. So I think all the steps that we're taking around sort of building will. Communications, improving our communications, I think is part of that. And then last, sort of the taking action. I think that's one of the reasons we really wanted David Kerp to come talk to us about what is the agenda that we need to create, and I think we get into this defensive agenda in these times. And it's real important to note that, there's a chart that I guess I dropped, but it's important to note that CHIP was created in the Balanced Budget Act in 1997. So at the time we were making tremendous cuts, we actually got Congress to agree to make children's health a priority. So we actually had a $40 billion increase in the Balanced Budget Act dedicated to children. And so finding those opportunities and pursuing them, but also thinking about even sort of no-cost ideas. So Drew Weston's going to come and talk a little bit about this, but in terms of the messaging issues, I think some of the framing of things are important, and I think that's something that can pull the community together, is around how we frame. And I just wanted to highlight here that this issue of investment in the future is actually, I would urge people to stick with it. I was at the Grant Makers for Children, Youth, and Families meeting earlier this spring, and any of you were there too. There was this conversation about, people are sick of it, we're tired of talking about it, we need a new frame. And so one of the things we really wanted to test with Drew and with David Walker was, is that true? And what they found is, it's to the public, it's a no, like back to what Senator Menendez said, it's a no-brainer. People inherently get that you invest in kids for the future. And so talking about it immediately connects with their values and what they think is important. The other kind of important frames here is sort of a back to basics frame. And we're in these sort of economic times, getting back to basics and making kids that first priority. It actually resonated very strongly with the public, as you can see. In fact, it was the #1 mean rating of the messages. And then also, as David Walker pointed out, by almost a 3-to-1 margin, people believe that kids are worse off. And people believe in this country very strongly in the American dream, and that's threatened. And really talking about it from that value is, the American dream's threatened, and what we need to do is renew our commitment to that, and that means making sure the next generation's as strong as possible. So